Here we go. All right, we are on. Welcome to episode 10 of the first season of Jazz Explained. We're talking about jazz education, the past of jazz education, the present, the strange year we've all encountered this past year, and where we think things are going in the future. I'm talking with Preston Pierce from Plano West High School, Dr. Mike Bogle with the Grammy shirt from, so it's officially now the Cedar Valley campus of Dallas College. Is that the
That's
correct
correct.
name now?
That's it.
And then Sergio Palmas Rodriguez, who was, as we were talking before we got on, one of our first Rising Stars on the first Rising Stars concert. He's played on several of the main concert series since then, and he is joining us from the University of Cincinnati. And then we've got a few guests in here. We'll be adding people as we go on. So, one thing we all have in common is we all studied in college at North Texas under various names. Mike Bogle and I at North Texas State University. I'm assuming Preston and Sergio were at University of North Texas. So we've got a similar starting point as far as the collegiate side. Preston, why don't you talk about how you entered into playing music and then kind of your high school and collegiate experience in learning jazz?
Yeah, so starting off early, I guess I should say my mom is originally she's from Brazil, and in Brazil they don't have the opportunity like we do here in the States to sign up for band or very easily just say, hey, I want to take piano lessons for, a few bucks a week or whatnot. And so to my mom, it was very important music. So from an early age, right away, she says, we're signing up for piano lessons. So from as early as I can remember. And then sixth grade, joined band, which is pretty typical again here in Texas. And I started on the saxophone. And, my love for music continued, and we decided to go into college. And, and in terms of education, I was conflicted. I actually started at the University of North Texas as a jazz studies major. Um, and I was always conflicted, and my parents are always in my ear. You should, look into education, consider it. And so actually, I switched to music education and got my first teaching job as a band director, and moved over to Plano, and we started a jazz program. As I was telling you earlier, Mike, I started at Shepton High School, and which Plano is a unique situation where it's a 2-year schools split up. And it started off with a really strong group of 9, 10 students. And we moved up together, and we just kind of created this a culture at Plano West. And it's continued since I've been there. And there's the younger kids that are middle school feeders look forward to it. And we do various things from hosting summer camps with the Helping Jazz Initiative to get those kids started early. And yeah, here we are today.
And you've gone up to New York and participated in the essentially Ellington program competition.
Right, yeah, we've been to Essentially Ellington twice. Well, we're supposed to go last year. We were selected. It was virtual. So twice we've been selected, and we'll actually find out this next Friday if we got selected again.
Oh, great! And
Um,
that's a pretty selective group. How many schools get in?
15, and it's
Wow.
that for high school jazz bands. That's considered the Super Bowl
Yeah.
for high school jazz band. I mean, it's the best of the best are there, and it's quite honestly my favorite part about that competition is hearing the other bands, the 14 other bands, because it's just truly incredible hearing what these young players are doing. And we won a few downbeat awards last year with our small group and big man, and um, got a couple more. I'm actually not supposed to say this yet. But a couple more coming this year, and a couple kids we found out last week that are selected for the NYO Jazz and up in New York, which is the National Youth Orchestra Jazz under the direction of Sean Jones. So they're actually
Which,
going to go in July and June or end of June.
yeah, which kids got selected for
Uh,
that? Can you say?
yeah. Connor McLeod on alto saxophone
Okay.
and Coleman Burks on drums.
Yeah, that's right. I think I saw Coleman post that.
Yeah. So it's going to happen, and they're not going to get to do. Usually, NYO Jazz will do a tour. They'll go overseas or travel the United States. But this year, they're probably going to keep it in New York and then do a. They're going to record an album, which will be new and pretty cool. And
Wow.
yeah, so I told the kids, I said, look, if y'all do for sure do a concert in New York, I'm there. So uh, it'll be exciting.
Yeah, and one of our rising stars on the concert Thursday, Isaac Byrd, studied with you in high school and studied with Sergio at UTA for what, 1 year, right?
Yeah, 1 year.
Okay.
Yeah, Isaac's a special young man.
He is. And he's a nice kid. Mike Bogle, tell us about your background, what instrument of your collection you started on, and then your introduction to jazz, and then your collegiate education.
Yeah, well, it's a pretty long story at this point, but you may want to cut me off and come back. But no, I grew up in Flower Mound, actually, in Texas.
Oh, that's right.
And just down the road, and went to then Louisville High School. Also went to middle school there and elementary school, and but as
Were you there with any of Rich Madison's kids?
yeah, I know one of Rich's Madison's kids pretty well, and certainly Rich was there, and he was a huge influence on me.
Yeah, because I knew TK, and then what was the kid's name that was the musician?
Yeah,
The
it was a
other
musician.
brother.
Yeah,
I forget his name
I'll
now.
think of it in a minute, but yeah, he was the red hair, and he
Yeah.
played keyboards. He played synthesizers. He loved like prog rock and synthesizers. So I think, which is interesting because Rich was such a bebop guy, but I'm sure he was probably happy that he liked music. But Rich used to come to our school, and play, and of course, just blow everybody away. Plus the half the 1 o'clock would be in our practice rooms teaching private lessons. And but I started on piano when I was probably about 5 or 6, with the typical, the church piano teacher, and Dorothy Spain was her name. And I came back one summer after learning the Goodbye Yellow Brick Road book by Elton John. And she threw up her hands and said, I have no idea what this music means or how it's notated, how it, I can't help you anymore. So she fired me as a student after Elton John. But then I was in, it wasn't too long after that, I was in 6th grade band. And I was basically conned into playing the trombone, as they do. I'm sure Preston knows all about this, right? They have whole seminars on how to fill out their band.
Don't give our secrets away now.
I know. Oh, it's coming, man. What do you mean? This is my whole presentation. No, but it was, it really, made a big impact on my life, and people don't know that, that how they do this. But yeah, like I went in for my first meeting with this lady named Carol Allen, who was a career band director. I actually was commissioned to play a piece for her over in Arlington at Bowie High School when she retired like 30 years later. But she, I came in after taking my little aptitude test, and she said, so what do you want to play? And I said, saxophone, because my cousin played the saxophone. And she said, well, okay, I think you'd be a really good trombone player. And my brother was already 2 years ahead of me, and he played tuba. And so the fix was already kind of in, but she said, well, I'll put down saxophone and maybe trombone. And I was like, yeah, put down whatever you want as long as I get to play saxophone, you know. And she said, well, come to the band hall on Monday night. Bring your parents. Like, okay. So I go over to the band hall Monday night, got the parents in tow, go in, nothing but trombones everywhere. So it was like, oh, okay. Well, this is kind of shiny. It's kind of cool. Okay, I guess if do you think I can play this thing? So so that was the beginning of a very long career, which is still going. Actually, I still play trombone, but I got my doctorate at North Texas in trombone performance and piano and composition.
Well, you played trombone in the 1 o'clock, right?
I did, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to tell you guys, I undercut the high school band directors sometimes. If I have a kid I know wants to play trumpet or euphonium or drums or something, about the end of 4th grade, we'll start splitting up piano time with one of those instruments. So by the end of 5th grade, they can already play it pretty well. So then it's like, yeah, I guess, okay, I guess you can do trumpet. All right, we'll let you do that. We'll put someone else on trombone.
Yeah, I had one of those of yours.
You
He was
did.
great too. I miss him.
And yeah. In fact, we did that. I think we started trumpet in Nathan played everything. He went between guitar, trombone, saxophone, but we started trumpet probably somewhere in 4th grade or going into 5th grade. Yeah.
But yeah, it's been great. I mean, going through the band program was definitely great, and playing a brass instrument definitely keeps you humble. That's for sure. So don't mean to give away all your secrets, Preston. It's that's all I'll say. But it's it was definitely a great experience learning how to read music on that level, and even the marching and all that. Funny story later I told, I was working in Minnesota at Music Tech, which later became McNally Smith, and Chick Corea was playing in town, and so I went down to see him, and I went backstage, and because I already kind of knew him a little bit from because he gave me a print license for Got a Match, for the big band arrangement and all that, but I went backstage and talked to him and said, Chick, I'm teaching now at this really cool new school. It's very high tech, and I'd like to get you over there sometime, and I said, we really focus on, jazz and popular music. And I said, we don't even have a marching band. And he goes, and he was in his own world, like he always is. He really lives inside of music, and he just for a minute there, he was completely serious, and he just kind of got a look on his face. He said, marching band. What is that? He literally didn't know right at that moment, like, what that was. And I go, like Tap Step, the album where you're playing a little drum, and, but it was funny. He has that Boston accent. So, and it was pretty funny. He didn't, right at that moment, he had no idea what a marching band was. I guess he's thinking, how do I get, Jack DeJohnette, marching,
Right. Unless you're in second line or something, and
right. Yeah, he was very curious about it, though.
Yeah. Hey, Mike, we've talked about being piano players that have been brass players. The one benefit is it teaches you to have breaths in your line and not just play nonstop like young pianists are apt to do.
Yes, yeah, that's true. It really helps, with that, playing lines and taking breaths, and so, but I always tell my students, it's just like when you're speaking, if you're speaking all the time and you never take a breath and you never stop and you keep going and then you move to another subject and you keep going and tell all your best stories, it's like nobody wants to hear it, right?
Yep. Yeah.
So it's like, say something and then make a point and then maybe say something else. maybe let someone else speak, So, but yeah, the brass definitely, or any kind of wind instrument, you definitely have to breathe.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, there's many many things like that. But one instrument is akin to another. Once you learn one instrument, it's easier to learn another one. And but the funny thing is, I think for high school students is that many times when you learn that one instrument, that first instrument, and you become like intertwined with it. Every time you hear it on the radio, you're like, "There's my instrument. That's my instrument. That's me." You become like identify with it, and you never would even enter your mind many times to try to learn another instrument.
Right.
Because it's so hard. First of all, the first one. So that's why I think it would be nice if more schools would do more things like come into the concert band with guitars and keyboards and say like, "Hey, let's get so and so from the euphonium over there," which I also played, by the way, and have him come up and try his hand at guitar, because actually most of those instruments I just mentioned in many ways are much easier than bassoon or oboe. So at least to do something that's just kind of decent. So I think that would be a fun thing to do more of. Of course, I'm not in your shoes, Preston, with necessarily teaching. I assume concert band. Do you teach that as well as jazz band?
Yeah, jazz band, concert band, marching band, the whole gamut.
The whole deal, man.
Yeah.
Sergio, how about your background?
Well, mine is quite different because I am from Spain, so it's different in Spain, and it was different back then. So I was born in '83. So in Spain, music was at the conservatory and had nothing to do with school. So I am very jealous when you guys talk about high school and music, because I had to go to the conservatory at night. So I had to do all the homework and all the work that every other kid had to do. Plus, I had to go to the conservatory at night. And the only option you had was classical music. So my father is he's like an amateur guitar player, and he loves jazz and Brazilian music and Cuban music. So,
but I've heard him; he's pretty good.
Yeah, he plays good.
I've heard some recordings.
Good. Yeah. He has great ears.
Yeah.
So he's self-taught. He cannot. He doesn't know what a C major 7 chord is or whatever, but he can play all the things you are. So, and he does in his own key. Like he might play all the things you are in C and stuff like that. But I love jazz since I remember, because I was always around music at home. But believe me or not, jazz back then in Spain was to me it was like something that Americans do, that it's like superhero stuff. Like I didn't have anybody in my circles that played jazz, so I thought it was something for superhumans. I had at home all the records, Bill Evans, Monk, and all that. So I played classical piano, and I was 18 years old, and I finished high school there. And I had to go to the university, and I was sitting with my parents, and I said, there's nothing I like to do besides music. So they were telling me, so why don't you go and study, I don't know, something related to the arts? And I said, no, I just want to do music. So I was very lucky that jazz got into the conservatory for the first time the year I finished high school.
Wow.
For the first time in history in Spain. So imagine, I think at UNT, the jazz program started, in the 50s, right?
50s, yeah.
Yeah, so in Spain, that happened in the 2000s.
47.
So, 47.
Oh, right.
I think that's right, yeah.
So imagine...
in charge of that history stuff.
Yeah, at least the big band side, yeah.
Right, yeah, the dance band.
The dance band.
Right. Yeah. Well, and even on that side, at some of the was it Curtis Conservatory in Philadelphia, even into the 70s, because I knew people that were there, or there was two different schools. Both of them were classical based. If you were in a practice room and they heard you playing jazz, they'd turn off power to the building.
Hey, Sergio, what part of Spain were you in?
Granada is a city in the south of Spain,
On the coast?
and
Is it down on
yeah, yeah. The city is not in the coast, but if you drive 30 minutes, you're in in the coast, and if you drive 30 minutes on the other direction, you get to the mountains. So we have snow during the winter, and we have the beach on during the summer. But to study my undergrad, I had to go to Barcelona, which is north. It's quite far, so I had to leave home and go there, and I studied there my undergrad. But it was the first program, the first year, so things usually take longer to develop. But I had great teachers. It's just that things are much better now. I teach now a class in that same school I studied my undergrad. Not a class, but I am the external research consultant, so I direct some of their undergrad thesis and stuff like that. So now I am aware of the level that they have now, and it's very impressive. I would say, they have nothing to envy to the programs here in the States now. In terms of facilities, curriculum, teachers, everything is great now. So I did my undergrad there, and then I met in Barcelona. I met Stefan Carlson and Ed Sof. So I think I heard Stefan first, and then the next year Ed Sof came in as well, and I auditioned to UNT, and I got a teaching fellow position, and I studied there my master's and then my doctorate, my DMA, and I have been here since then. But I envy you guys when you talk about high school and all that, and like people like Preston and Mark the Hertog at Plano Senior High, and also David Lown. Like I have been collaborating with all of them, and Stockton's the Helping Jazz Initiative program, and I also work at the GDYO Jazz Institute.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So even though I'm not familiar with the high school system, through these experiences with high school students in the States, I have been fortunate to see firsthand how passionate they are about jazz and the great level that if they are committed, they can reach being so young.
Did you say you got your doctorate in Spain or no?
No, at UNT. I did my master's and doctorate. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, there's a great jazz program, great band program in Texas, and really just great education, I think, overall, compared to I've traveled around the country quite a bit, and I really think that our education program in Texas is, believe it or not, with all its problems, it's really pretty great compared to other places.
Yeah. The level of just high school instrumentalist, vocalist, I mean, even pianist is a lot higher than other areas.
Mm-hmm. And even colleges, just the emphasis on education.
Right.
So it's pretty.
Well, yeah, look how many colleges just in DFW have great big band and jazz programs.
Yeah.
Where for a long time it was just North Texas. TCU had some, and there was actually some great players at TCU. Texas Wesleyan had a program once Tim got there. But now they've developed a lot more all over. All of the Dallas college system has great programs. Yeah. SMU has some great music courses.
UTA.
Yeah, UTA has a phenomenal program and has been for several years now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, team did a great job at UTA, and everybody else there. It's just amazing how that program continues to grow. And I think I want to thank Preston, because him and David and Stockton and Mark the Hurt of what they do, it's just amazing. And they're UNT, it's like this factory that creates great musicians and educators. So wherever they go, they create little UNTs everywhere. and that's what Preston does. So some of the students, they are 16 and they're ready. They're ready to go anywhere and
Yep.
and and take charge.
And
So I
UTA has now recruited several students away from North Texas too.
Well, yeah, right now it's like they're at UNT they cannot get all the students that apply. So now students in that area they have two choices or more. But and also in all the I also work for the Dallas college system, and it's unbelievable that you can get this sort of education and get prepared to go anywhere and success and get and succeed. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was lucky to be at North Texas at the time when Dan Hurley, Rich Madison, Jack Peterson, who had developed really the first improv materials that were widely used, were teaching there too. So I was learning improv from the guys that had written the first books. And Mike, you were there for some of that too, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Definitely Hurley. Rich Madison was still there when I started, and then he got recruited down to
To northern Florida.
yeah,
Yeah.
UNF in Jacksonville. But yeah, I grew up around those guys before I went to Florida. Around Rich Madison, Jack Peterson, um,
Right. Yeah, you did. Yeah.
Palmas, and yeah, it was really a neat place back when Leon Breeden was at North Texas, and he was quite a force.
Yeah. Preston, who was doing the improv classes when you were there?
So I took improv one with Dan Hurley, but he
Okay.
had already retired, and it was online. So
Right.
I never would have thought, just thinking how things are today, but it was actually improv one at UNT when I was there was an online class. But we didn't have Zoom, so everything was by email or some other platform.
Yeah, yeah. Dan
Um,
and John Murphy were the first ones to do that there. I think I remember helping
yep.
Dan set that up.
Yeah, and then it was Mike Steinell did was the other improv class, improv two, and I'm kind of drawing a blank after that. But yeah, I was there in John Murphy's um
Or Fred
or
Hamilton, maybe.
yeah,
Probably
Fred
Fred.
Hamilton.
Yeah,
There you go. There you go. Thank you.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I was in.
Sergio. Oh,
Oh,
go
go ahead.
ahead, Mike.
No, I was just going to say, Dan. I was in the very first MIDI lab class that Dan started at UNT.
Wow.
That was because Dan was always such a computer fanatic. He was
Yeah.
he read all the manuals all the way through. And he was an expert on Macs. Back in the mid '80s.
He was, and I helped him set up that TX side and decide what he was going to do for the MIDI side, and yeah,
Yeah, I know.
that
He,
was
he used to mention your name. You guys were collaborating on some things.
yeah, because he had the idea for that years before he finally got it approved and the funding came together, and yeah, I had helped Dan decide what to do, what to bring in as far as the equipment for the lab, and um, I'd helped Paris set up his TX rack also, because he would work on sessions with us, and he'd go, "You guys got to show me how this all works."
Yeah, and in fact, Steve Wiest and I were both in the first MIDI lab, and yeah, but those were yeah, it was interesting times, and yeah, great teachers. You mentioned Jack Peterson. I was lucky enough to be in his improv class before he went down to Florida with Rich,
Yeah,
and he was an amazing, guitarist and pianist
yeah,
and and improv teacher. Yeah, he said he got so good on piano that he started to feel like he was better than he was on guitar, so he had to quit.
yeah. Once in a while, in Rich's improv class, if the pianists were having a bad day, he'd bring in Jack to play to make us feel worse.
Yeah, there you go. Right.
Or even one day, one or two of the pianists were struggling with something in improv class, and Dan had Jim Rotundi, a trumpet player, sit down and play a tune. And his mom was a piano teacher, and Jim just played great. He's like, okay, guys, this is a trumpet player doing this.
Yeah.
Sergio, what was kind of your improv mentors and the approach they took at that time?
Well, I came in as a master's student, but they asked me to do some deficiency courses because the curriculum in Spain was different. So maybe I didn't have enough improv credits in my undergrad or something. So I started out in Improv 3, and that was Lynn Seaton's class, and I enjoyed
Oh,
it, and
nice.
I learned a lot. And it was Lynn Seaton's, but Lynn and Steinel have a similar approach in the way they set the syllabus and the goals and everything. So I really enjoyed that way. They are both very organized with their schedule and transcriptions, and we had to learn a lot of recordings. So that was amazing. Then I did Improv 4 with Stefan, and then Improv 5, which I think that's the grad level, with Fred. And now you were talking about piano and guitar, and I remember, I thought of Fred as a guitar player because he was the guitar teacher. But one day in my improv class, when I just, first couple of classes I took with him, he grabbed the bass, and I couldn't believe what I heard.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
unbelievable. And yeah, Fred has been very inspiring. And then, Ed Sof and John Murphy, they never were my formal improv teachers, but I would say I learned a lot from them too. So I used to go to Ed all the time and ask questions and listen to some music together. I asked him to do what they call at UNT, a special problems class, which is a very negative title, I think, for the class. But what it means is that you can do a specific subject under a teacher, but they have to approve it. So I did a class with Ed Sof. So we did a concert dedicated to Wynton Kelly.
Oh,
So it
wow.
was not only his compositions, but we sort of recreated some of his work with the Miles Davis groups, and so Brad Lilly played, and Ed Sof, and I learned so much from those rehearsals with Ed that I am very grateful. I count him among my mentors. And then the other person is John Murphy, that he taught me research and analysis and all that, but he just made me think about music differently. And I think learning how to improvise or how to play jazz, it's a multi-dimensional process. So it's not
Yeah.
only sitting down and practice. You have to learn how to listen better, how to analyze, how to take choices. And I would say that Murphy and Ed helped me a lot with that. And then, of course, Stefan was my professor for 4 or 5 years, and Dan, I never studied formally with Dan, but we were friends too, and I picked a lot from his brain as well. And I had a lot of admiration for him because even though I didn't know anything about UNT back in Spain, I knew about Dan Hurley, of course, because of
Right.
the books. Um, and then I also studied with Michael Palma. He taught at UNT for a
One
while.
year, yeah.
Yeah, and Michael is one of the most brilliant people I know. So he's very passionate. He knows all the recordings. So he not only influenced me as a musician, but as a teacher as well. I think a lot of the things I do with my students, I got the inspiration from working with him. So I'm
Oh, that's
forever grateful
interesting.
to him too.
Yeah, yeah.
Very
So on
cool.
the Wynton Kelly, did you transcribe some of the solos too, or?
Yeah, but it wasn't. I didn't want from the very beginning. I talked to Ed and about it, and I didn't want to make an impression of his playing. But so I didn't transcribe formally the solos and stuff. I tried to listen for traits that I could borrow into my playing. But I transcribed all his music, and when deciding what to do for that concert, I transcribed a lot out of his trio albums and also his quintet album, Kelly Great, and some stuff like that. And I think I transcribed more comping than soloing back
Oh
then.
yeah, because his
Yeah, I was.
comping was great.
Yeah, so I was very impressed with his comping, and I think I practiced his time a lot during
Yeah.
that that process. Like I just played along the recordings and tried to figure out his articulation and all that.
Well, that
So it was
feel,
a
yeah,
great.
that feel between him, Philly Joe, and Paul Chambers is
Hmm.
just amazing. That groove.
In fact, I don't want to look like the nerd now, but I just wrote an article on Wynton Kelly. I just remember all that stuff that I studied back then. That was like 2015 or something, but I recycled some of that research, and I wrote an article for a peer review journal. It just got approved, so I am very excited about
Oh,
that.
that's great. So, since you started on that path, what do you tell students about transcribing, what they're looking for, and what they should take away and learn from transcribing?
Well, I think that process changes also. So I think there are so many different benefits that you get from transcribing, and you can transcribe in many different ways. So it really depends. But for example, something I do with the younger students, I don't want to talk about levels because everybody has different strengths and weaknesses, right? But something I work with them is I work on the Bud Powell, on the bebop piano style, right? So I make them transcribe one tune and play that tune every day for a whole semester. So with some students, it might be something like Celia or
Yeah.
Parisian Thoroughfare, something like that. And I make them play that every day. Or Barry Harris solo on Mousse de Mouche. But I want them to experience physically how does bebop piano feel? Where in the register are the lines happening and the comping? And what sort of accents do you do when you play bebop? So I think that's one aspect of transcribing. Another one is learning vocabulary. So if you are looking for vocabulary, I don't think you need to learn the whole solo. You could just learn pieces of things that really call your attention from different players. Sometimes remembering the whole solo, it's also good for memory purposes, not just for language, but just to be able to memorize. We need to use our memory when we are taking choices, when we're improvising. You need to remember what did you play before so you don't repeat yourself and stuff like that. Also how to organize and develop a solo. So I think there are many different aspects, but it's just what I think what we have to do is just make sure that the students are doing it in different ways, that they learn from the recording, not from any published transcriptions. I don't think that's very useful. Make sure that they memorize it rather than going to the paper right away and write the notes down. So I think with every student it's a different process, but it seems like that's the part that they enjoy the most. I think they enjoy that more than some other things that we have to go over, right?
Yeah. Preston, what do you do incorporating transcription? Because you're working with some younger students.
Yeah, so there's a gamut of students, like I said, from literally beginner level. They're the junior year, they decide they're going to do jazz, to students who are on the national stage. And the first thing that I like to start off with, as a matter of fact, on Tuesday we're starting a new transcription project. But just start with melodies, because they can hear melodies easier, even if it's simple melodies, and just so they're comfortable with it. Because I get some of these kids who they're in band, but they just need an extra class period. So they're like, well, I guess I'll try jazz band. Let's see what this is like. I hear it's a lot of fun. And it's like, well, then we start talking about transcribing. They kind of freak out and get nervous. Like, I can't do that. I can't figure it. It's like, well, hold on a second. So one of the first, and I took this. We had I'm blanking. One of the Marsalis brothers, the trombone.
Delphio.
Yes, thank you.
Delphi. Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, he came in with
Yeah.
the Hancock Institute, and he did a master class. And he says, all right, put this tune on. He says, I'm going to have your band transcribe this. And this is a few years ago. I'm thinking, the whole band's going to do it? He's like, yeah, just watch. Less than 10 minutes, we're going to learn this tune. I'm thinking, all right, let's see how this goes. And sure enough, through the process of going through that, within like 10 minutes, 15 minutes, that the whole band was playing the tune. And so, and it was a melodic tune. And so that's where we start. And like I said, in 10 minutes, we'll do something simple, and they're kind of like, oh, wow, we just transcribed this. And then as the abilities progress for my students. And then, of course, Sergio said a lot of wonderful things that I'd really try to drive home. But one of the things that's really important to me is when a student is transcribing, that it's not just they're not just trying to play the same notes and same rhythms, but kind of what he was alluding to, I think, talking about that bebop feel, whatever the tune is, that feel, really trying to capture that and mimic that. So I tell my students, and it happens time to time, they'll come into the transcription, and I can tell if they went and they pulled the sheet music of that transcription somewhere, it doesn't sound the same to the kid who actually
No.
learned it by ear. Like the feeling of it, the way they play it, is just totally different. And so that's one thing. Once they finally understand that and grasp that, that's when the students really start to blossom and they start feeling that's I just kind of refer to as swing in general, that swing feel. So yeah, that's kind of I guess some of the big points that Sergio didn't say that I also like to drive home with him.
Yeah. Mike, what do you do with transcriptions and incorporating that in the program?
Well, I'm a huge believer in transcriptions. And I mean, I remember the first time I heard someone, a tenor sax player, he used to be at North Texas. We were driving up to the Wichita Jazz Festival, and he was practicing in the car, of course, like you do. And he was playing, Oleo, Cherokee, and then he had like, then he would go into these choruses, and I was like, that's great. He knows like at least two choruses that he's worked out and memorized, and it didn't occur to me till later that they were Charlie Parker transcriptions, and to me, that's a great way to learn, even though they are published. Yeah, I've done tons of my own transcriptions back in the day before they had published transcriptions. But and I agree with you. But if you can just get anybody to understand that vocabulary, and so what if somebody goes, it's not like you're busted for copying someone. It's like most people are just glad to hear you play anything, from the history. Believe me, I've judged many jazz competitions. I would, kill for just somebody who could play a blues scale after listening to 200 tapes. But somebody who could actually play a quote, a tune, from Charlie Parker or something. I mean, like, oh my God, that'd be like, A+, their first chair. So now I'm a big believer in that. I would like to maybe ask a question and slightly pivot if it's okay, Michael.
Yeah.
Because what I do now is not only just jazz,
Yeah.
jazz is part of it, but it's also with popular music. And I'd like to get you guys' thoughts on that. Again, we have the D Jammy Awards coming up on the 28th.
Tell us about that if you're ready to touch on that yet.
No, absolutely. And I would like to invite you all to get your students involved in it too, because no matter where you're located. But it's basically started it 10 years ago from my students, production students, who are many very talented at making songs, making beats, whatever you want to call it, and we compete the old North Texas model, a little bit of healthy competition. But the way they compete is they submit them by a deadline, and then I send out the ballots and they vote. They vote on each other's stuff. But that's the best part I love about it, because it's not just me saying what's wrong with their song, which many times I feel very uncomfortable or very careful about that, because the fine line between that's genius and that's just wrong, So, and sometimes I don't want to be the one to definitely make the mistake, of saying, oh, that's just wrong, and it's like, then they go win 4 Grammys, So, and, I've had sort of similar experiences to that, believe it or not. One of my students at Brookhaven, did something like that. But anyway, yeah, so it's been very successful. Our awards, the entries are all in for this year. We have lots of categories from EDM, rock, jazz, um, R&B is very popular at our school. Of course, hip hop, and we usually have hip hop vocal, hip hop instrumental. We have far more instrumental um, entries than we do vocal because
Hmm.
that's kind of
Okay.
like another step.
Right.
And very interesting film scoring stuff. I have an extremely talented film scoring student right now, and because and for me, honestly, I love jazz and got into it early on. Went to Miami, and they were very hardcore on jazz, even though more on Latin too, and commercial gigs. Like I was
Right.
playing with Tom Jones and Burt Bacharach down there when I was practically didn't even know who these people were. I was like 16, 17 years old.
Yeah, and Miami was one of the early schools to have a commercial music program too.
Well, exactly. They started allowing electric bass because of Jocko.
Yeah.
And so you could do a whole degree in electric bass because they're like, well, obviously this is a worthy instrument. But I know, for me, I was telling Lona the other day that, if I, write my book one day, one of my books, I could call it All Dressed Up and Know Where to Go. Because I felt that way many times because I learned hundreds, if not thousands, of jazz standards, and can play them all in all different keys and transcriptions. It's like, but, where's the gigs? You know what I mean? Uh, so I'd like to hear, you guys' thoughts on that. Whereas to me, jazz it's harder too. It's a little bit more of a graduate school, and I know it's a great way to teach kids, just like marching band and just like concert band and classical music. And that's all part. I love classical music. I play it every day. Um, but I'd just like to hear you, some of you other guys' thoughts on that. Maybe Sergio and Preston. What do you think about that other stuff?
Preston, if you don't mind, I'm still thinking.
Oh no, yeah. I think that's great that you're opening up those opportunities for your students. Like one of the things that each year I always have, you know, at least one, if not two or three or four, um, that are pursuing music. I'm talking specifically in my jazz program,
Sure.
and and that's when like I sit down with them like at some point like we have to have before they start the applications, and we have a serious conversation about the differences between like is this something going into this for a living is different than just a hobby, because at the same time like
Right.
you want to major in jazz. Like I mean, quite frankly, like as I mentioned, I started off as a jazz studies major at North Texas, and I saw some guys who had graduated and were in the former 1 o'clock members and who were struggling to pay rent, and because it's tough, and there's this you have to be able to I hate to use the word hustle, but I mean you've got to be strong to be able to do it. And it's not just someone who can you can lock yourself up in a practice room and learn all your modes and whatnot, and transcriptions, like you said, there's a whole other side to it. So, and some of my students, they can be very much when they leave my program, it's just like jazz, 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 jazz. And it's like you need to be able to open up to other genres of music, to make a living. So I think it's a wonderful thing to get exposure and open those doors. And I've got a very good friend, Sergio. You might have been in school with him. Jose Perez. He's out in
Yeah, yeah,
L.A.
in
now.
LA. Yeah,
Yeah, he
yeah.
plays with Poncho Sanchez. He's a
Hmm.
timbalero with him, and I had him actually come and do a Zoom masterclass with my students. And he says it's surprising. He says a lot of these, like you hear commercials, you hear these people that are playing drums for fill in the blank, whatever pop singer. He says most of those guys they have a jazz background.
Hmm.
Yep.
He says a lot of these guys are jazz musicians, and that's how they're paying the bills. And so I think it's a great concept, and the fact you've got the peers voting on it. as well. I think that's a really cool concept too. So
That is. That is. Hey, Sergio, you got a little more time because this is kind of an area
There you
I've
go.
spent 40 years with, in that I was finishing up at North Texas, and I love the stories of Miles and Gil Evans living in the basement by the heating pipe. And I swore that I was only going to play acoustic piano and straight ahead jazz for the rest of my life. And I went through North Texas in just 8 semesters. I went straight through, no summers, in and out, which is surprisingly unusual there. My last semester there, I started writing music for NBC. I'm going, I'm writing synthesizer songs and music for TV and not jazz, and it's pretty good money. I kind of like this. And I'd send up pieces to the studio in New York. And then one time I'm in the studio, I said, okay, what time are the guys coming in? They said, well, there's no guys. This is your studio. Here's a DX7, a Prophet 5, and a Lindrum. You have an engineer all day. Go ahead and do what you need to do.
Wow.
And that led to 40 years of sitting in a room by myself, for the most part, creating music. And the first decade out of school, I mean, I was doing commercials, I was doing TV themes, and you have to have respect and understanding of different styles of music. Because every day you go in, I may be doing cartoon music that's Stravinsky influenced one day. The next day I'm doing a stop and go jingle with Michael Bolton singing. Next day I'm doing a jazz track. The next day I'm doing something else. And so you learn to respect and understand those other styles and appreciate all different forms of music. And so I've always felt, in fact, that I had started grad classes, and I remember sitting there in sight singing class at the start of my master's going, I'm writing music for television, but as my master's, I'm sitting here struggling trying to sight sing. I'm learning more outside of school than I am in school. And so why don't I go ahead and further my career by doing the thing that I learn more from and enjoy more? And out of all of that and out of my experiences, I've always felt there should be in college programs, there should be an entrepreneur program, which North Texas did end up adding, and some of the music students become part of that. There should be a basic accounting course for musicians as entrepreneurs. There should even at this time be web design. There should be social media, how to promote yourself on your side. I mean, really long term to someone's career, those are far more beneficial than medieval Renaissance history. So that's my side of that. Sergio, what do you think as far as other styles and incorporating that? And
if Dr. Bush is watching, Mike said that. Finkel wasn't me.
Oh, she knew me well. Yeah. I expressed some of that.
My first job teaching at the collegiate level, it was at Mountain View. And I started teaching jazz piano lessons. That's why they hired me. But I ended up teaching music appreciation.
Yeah.
So believe me, I made use of all that Renaissance knowledge. At the end of the day, I feel very proud that I took advantage of that. But yeah, I was going to say that no matter, what you study in music, you need imagination. You need to feed your imagination. And that's part of your success as in any other career. So I teach my students jazz because that's what they are expecting from me. But I always encourage them to listen to other music because, in fact, I love jazz and that's the music that I study. But at home, I heard Brazilian music, I heard Cuban music. So I have so many influences. And the music that I truly love is flamenco because that's the music that I enjoyed with my friends. That's my culture. So I used to to do hand claps on the street for my friends to play guitar, and we would learn the background vocals to, so that's the music that I really shared, or Brazilian music. At some point, I got crazy about that, um, and that influences my jazz playing. But jazz is the music that I study the most, and I think, as Preston said, if you figure out jazz, I think you can figure out anything else.
Yeah.
It's the most demanding music in terms of rhythm, and some people might argue that they might say Indian music is more demanding on rhythm. Yes, it is, but jazz connects rhythm and melody. It's different. So when you learn bebop, or when you learn post bop, you hear rhythms, and you need to make the relation between how do these rhythms translate into notes in this particular style of jazz. So I think no other music in the world is that sophisticated in that aspect. And of course, in the harmonic aspect, is also very demanding, right? So I encourage them to keep open-minded, and listen to other kinds of music. And I think when I do combos, I always bring up some of that music. At UTA, my last combo at UTA, we were doing Chick Corea's music from the album Antidote. So I transcribed the whole album, and I adapted some of the parts to other instruments because my combo was slightly different. And we were playing Chick's music, and with the Zebras at UNT, I made a flamenco jazz project one semester. Another semester it was a Bill Evans tribute with singers. We had 2 singers and 4 horns. So I don't know. Here at CCM, I'm doing the Brazilian jazz combo, and I have a singer and 4 horns and rhythm section. I think you always have to sort of take what you learn from the jazz masters and do it your way. So I think the more influences you have, the more chances you have to create something new. If you only listen to jazz, I think it's going to be very difficult for you to become the new Keith Jarrett. But
Yeah.
if you have other things, not only music, but also some other life experiences, you might get more chances to come up with something that it's unique, right?
Well, I think that's important. Everyone that's moved jazz forward and developed different styles, or the things, stylistic things that took jazz different places, did that because of influences from other music on them.
Yeah, and I think we have been talking about Chick Corea. I think that's the best example. Chick Corea. All his Latin influences, and when he met Paco de Lucia, that I wrote my dissertation on that subject. It it changed the way he played the piano.
Yeah.
Meeting Paco de
Yeah.
Lucia, but then he changed the way flamenco music was. He was so important that he changed the way flamenco musicians understood rhythm and harmony and form. So it's just amazing how these things can, how these contributions can happen. But yeah, sorry to change subject, but you were also mentioning about the music business and entrepreneurship and all that, and I agree with you that that's crucial these days. Here at CCM, we have a great program called CMP, Commercial Music Program, but it's like the jazz program and that program are brothers and sisters, right? So
Good.
our jazz students take classes from that program, and the students from CMP take classes from the jazz program.
That's
They
good.
take jazz theory, they take jazz arranging, and then they do their own things too. And then we have a music business class as well that they all have to take. So I think that's the future, just providing them as many tools as possible, and see what they can do with that. For example, Isaac Preston, we were talking about Isaac, and he loves jazz. He loves McCoy and Herbie and all that, but he loves making beats and all that too,
Yeah.
and he
Yeah.
connects these two things in a very creative way, and he's curious about both. So I think you just have to feed their curiosity. But one of the things I remember with Isaac is that he was, I don't know, first time I met him he was 15 or 16, and when I started teaching him he was probably 17 or 18. He was very young, and we were checking out Bill Evans on Beautiful Love, and I showed him those chords that he plays at the beginning. Those triads
Yeah.
coming from melodic, minor, and all that. And he was so excited. He almost cried, and he told me, "Thank you so much." And he was 17, and he said, I have been searching for that sound for years. And I
Wow.
was like, for years? You're 17? And he said, yeah, 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 I have been searching for it. So, I think sometimes you just, students have these unique things within, and you just have to awake, uh, you know, uh, move some of these things that they have inside that they probably don't even know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's as those are great, great comments. They students also, I know when I started college at Miami, because I love jazz, because I grew up with 1 o'clock lab band, Rich Madison, but I also liked stuff I heard on the radio, you know, and so I couldn't quite reconcile the fact that sometimes when I brought some of that stuff up to my teachers, they were kind of like, "Oh, that's not a thing," you know. So, and I think music school, you kind of have to be careful because I mean, a lot of kids don't grow up knowing about Bill Evans and Miles Davis, but so it's sometimes I think you have to try to remember what it is that you liked about music before you went to music school. What is it really turned you on? Because I love it when, like, if I'm looking for something from my keyboard ensemble to play, I want suggestions from the students. Just anything, because it's always to me better if it's something that they pick. They have and I didn't come to this overnight, because I was indoctrinated like everyone else into jazz, classical, that's it, forget about it. But I remember once at UTA, I had a student in a combo, and he had brought in a Chuck Mangione piece, and it was one of the really hit pieces, one of the really corny ones, and my first instinct was to say, like, you know, you shouldn't do that, and jazz combo, but then I thought, you know what? You should do that. That's fine. That's great because you like it. He was a trumpet player, and so, I know there's been many instances, at least a few in my career, in college, my college career as a student, when teachers would sort of, you know, shape you in a certain way,
Yeah.
and you know, I think it would. It's not that I haven't had the best education that there is, because I have, but I try to, be open to things that they like, and also get them to, if they compose, really encourage them to compose and build their catalog, start releasing things, and copywriting their music, and that, because everybody has at least one original song inside them, if not more, and to really encourage that side. So,
Yeah.
and it may be in any genre too, because everybody, that's one I love about the DJAMI Awards, because I encourage them to find their genre, and they don't even know what it is at first. It's like, what are you into? Hip hop, R&B, jazz? They're like, I don't know. Well, here's this song I made. I'm like, yeah, that's R&B. You know what I mean? Kind of. Sometimes we have to discuss it between the class, and they tell me what it is. But but it's really interesting for them to find their voice that way. It's like, oh, and by the way, one of the biggest growing categories is world music, which is mostly Latin music. Um, when I remember a story from North Texas, when this started to dawn on me, I was in Malena Kusa's class when I just come back to college to North Texas, and I asked her. She was from Argentina, I believe,
Yeah.
and she loved this South American music, and I was all excited to be back in college. I've been out of college for like 4 or 5 years, and so she was from Argentina, Latin, and I asked her, oh, do you like you ever heard of Willie Colon? He was a famous salsa guy, and she said, oh, you mean popular music? And I was like, whoa, wait a minute, I thought that was Latin music. I was like, oh, they have classical and popular too. That's crazy. You know, that was like mind blowing to me. And it just really started to sink in that there was this thing, because I grew up in Miami really playing Latin music so much, and it was really in my blood. But I never really thought about that there's classical music in South America
Yeah,
too. Their own,
yeah.
you know, that mainly all this stuff that I was into and been doing was popular music, So
When it's interesting too when you get students to check, at least back in our day, check the liner notes on albums, and I remember people at North Texas going, "Wait a minute, that cool solo on James Taylor, Don't Let Me Be Lonely Tonight is Michael Brecker, and that solo on Hello It's Me by Todd Rundgren is Randy Brecker," and all these jazz players showing up playing these great solos on pop tunes too.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and you're right. Jazz is the hardest, and uh, but there's, if you hold every student that's interested in a career in music to that standard, at least at my school, they would. It's just not. It's not their thing. It doesn't make sense to them. It's like, why are you making me do that? That.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think it's a journey, so everybody's on a different.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think in my case, there are some students that approach me with some stuff that I. It's not that I say, oh, don't do that at all. I think those, that's never the right option. But sometimes I have to. It's hard to find a balance because you know that some people have that stuff already and that they're good at that and that they're gonna discover that by themselves. But if you don't expose them to certain things, they're not gonna be exposed to these things ever. Like Jazz Messenger's repertory, like things like Nika's Dream and Along Came Betty and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's hard. We just have. That's why our job it's so tough because there's no formula. You just have to adjust to every single student and
improvise.
Yeah.
Teaching,
Yeah.
Well,
That's
there
funny.
was.
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry,
go ahead, Preston.
I would say it's I can 100% relate to that. When I first started at Plano West, it was very structured. Like, hey, by the time we hit this month, we're doing this and this and this, and we're not going to deviate from that. And luckily, well, some of y'all may know Bart Morantz, who's at Booker T for many years. He comes out, pre-pandemic, he was coming out once a week through the Institute. And he was working with the combo. And he says, look, I want for next week, I want for y'all to bring originals. And I'm thinking, what? I can't do that. I haven't even began to talk to them about bringing in originals. But I was thinking to myself, I didn't tell him that. I'm thinking, oh, man. All right. So, the kids show up next week. I was blown away with what they I couldn't believe it. I'm just thinking they not have any. I've never gave them instruction on. I mean, there was a few things we had to talk about. We'll fix the range on this horn. Consider doing this, and not to sound like I'm bragging, but we ended up winning 2 downbeat awards on those original compositions, and it was 100. It was just completely their creative side without a teacher getting in the way and saying, "Here's the structure." And I was just
sometimes they just need permission.
Yeah, exactly.
Their own thing, It's like you can be as good as you want. I'll let you. It's fine.
Or I think these days just the opportunity, because for us it was different. It's different for everybody here because we're from different places and generations. But before there was more music going on, right? More gigs, more opportunities. Now school is the opportunity. School is the platform where they do stuff. So I think we have to be more open these days because they might not even get a chance to do that if it's not at your school, at your class. So that I think that's an important point, Preston.
Yeah.
Well, the whole start of this pandemic, we started doing listenings, and the kids came in. I said, I want to hear what you're checking out. Let's talk about it. And I was just blunt. Like some of the stuff they're coming in with is bootleg recordings that I didn't even hear about. I'm like, whoa, what is this? And I'm checking it out now. And,
Yeah. Well, Mike, last mid-January last year, we came out and played at your school. Yep. Sergio, I think September of 2019, maybe, you and Stockton started our concert series with History of Jazz Piano.
Hmm.
Both of those, we thought the world was great. Everything was fine. Everything was it's just going to be another normal year. And that all changed. So, how did everyone deal with music education, jazz education this past year? How have you adapted and what have you learned from new systems and new processes? Anyone want to start there?
Well, I will if you want. Yeah, it's just, more of the online thing. And like you said, with the exception of a couple of students who were struggling more than others, I think most of them, really embraced it once, you got to figure out and really structure, what you want them to do. But we have a new ensemble called the Recording Ensemble, and it's part of our really overhauled commercial music curriculum, which is now completely separate from the other music curriculum. And it's designed to lead to certificates and AAS degrees, 2-year degrees. It's called part of a technical program. There's a career in technical education. So, um, but the Recording Ensemble, we made last um, spring, when this first started. And I remember it was about the same time I had a meeting with our advisory committee, which we have an external advisory committee made up of recording engineers, studio designers, lawyers, and everything in this area. Um, and and one of them said, well, and we had to go virtual for the meeting because it was, everything was just going down. And he said, there's this new thing where everybody's, trying to jam together online. And everybody was like, how do you do that? And there'll be something to discuss too. And some people said, oh, jam Kazam and all this, but but it really does too much latency. You can't really do it. But people are doing it. Look at the late night television, shows, and they have little bands, and people are making these recordings where it at least appears. I
Well,
think that's the key word.
that's the word.
That everybody's playing together. And to me, I mean, this is the music industry. I'm sorry, pre-recorded tracks, all this stuff. And how do you manage that is the question as a producer, and how do you put on a believable show? I mean, in some ways, the music industry was built on a lie in a way, because I was reading something about this recently, like the old Western shows, that they would come around doing, shoot 'em up rodeo shows. And they started, it was basically, cowboys versus Indians, Native Americans. And they would say, that, oh, this is, this real Indian chief, and it was not true. I forgot the name of, does anybody remember the name of those first shows who put on those? I mean, we're talking about 1800
Yeah.
probably.
Well, it's like the Indian who cried at the end of the night when TV went off was an old Italian actor.
There you go. Right, right. So this was part of show business, and people were told, this is authentic, and so, this continues today and to some extent, show business. It's the music industry. So anyway, we had to figure out. And so I told him in this meeting, I said, you know what, we're going to do that. Because he said, hey, Cedar Valley, we should be on the cutting edge of this. And I was like, yeah, you're right. Okay, I accept that challenge. And so we made a recording and a video last spring with the band, all virtually. Everybody sending tracks, sharing them around, and making videos of them playing their parts, so that we could do this, Brady Bunch effect kind of thing, or whatever you want to call it, Hollywood Squares. And so we did that, and so we've continued doing that, and it's quite a challenge, but I think it's a worthwhile one. And then also just getting them to produce stuff, and so much of the music industry is done on the computer. And as far as, where do you upload your copyrights? On the computer. Where do you email people about gigs, or trying to set up a publishing account, on the computer. So many of these things have kind of focused on that even more, and so it's been it's been pretty successful, I think. They certainly we miss that live interaction thing, but as you're saying, some of it's just not safe, sometimes, and
Yeah.
in some ways it wasn't all that safe before the pandemic. I was getting people's colds all the time. um, so that's it's been kind of cool, and the enrollment has been good. And people just give them deadlines, and especially this thing of producing music and competing and voting, and it gives us something to shoot for.
Right. And your school had to also help out on the technology side just to help some of the students be able to have online access.
Absolutely, we had to give lists of, there was, Comcast, AT&T, they all came to the plate and offered some free internet access for people who couldn't get it. The school even, sent laptops to some kids, and iPads, and a lot of resources, food, in some cases. So there's a lot of resources available to the students that they really tried to help them out. Uh, and like I said, I still have, one student who doesn't really get email. I have to text him everything, but we have Zoom meetings for his piano
Yeah.
lessons, and he's there, and it works just fine, really. Because as you guys know who teach private lessons, a lot of it comes down to you need to practice more.
Yep. Yep.
That's the
You can
biggest
say
problem.
that anywhere.
you know? And just realizing how much practice it really takes is a big part of it. And no amount of me, browbeating you, is going to get that. But maybe I can inspire you, and I think that's what we try to do. And but no, it's been kind of a positive thing, just, and students sometimes have more time to do stuff, and
Yeah.
are able to progress. I almost feel like sometimes our lessons, as Sergio was saying, are more productive because nobody's having to drive or catch a bus to come in, and um, you know there's kind of like maybe less cancellations.
I
Sometimes
think you're
people
right.
still have to cancel, but um, you know so it's been kind of cool for the commercial music, which we were trying to go more high tech anyway. And so this was a way to just say, yeah, you got to be able to work your computer.
Yeah.
You've got to be able to get on eCampus and look at those assignments and videos, and I try to make more videos, instructional videos for them, and just and interact with them in various ways. Lots of emails. I'm sure you've all watched plenty of videos on how to be more effective online teaching. And but so that's something that we all have had to do. But to me, it's been fun, and it's been something that I was already interested in. Just somehow my whole college career, starting probably with Dan Hurley's MIDI class in the '80s, was just, and then getting my first Mac, and uh, has just led down this path, of more and more technology. Um, so I remember I tried to get on the IAJE for many years. It's like, hey, I put out an album, have my group perform. It's like denied. Let me do an improv class. I've been teaching improv at the in college for 4 years. Like we're like, no, let me do sight singing or vocal jazz. I teach vocal jazz. I know, and I thought, what would they accept? And I thought, film scoring. I bet they would accept that. So I wrote up a proposal and said, and I was just starting to nick the surface of it with the at UTA with the what was then called music media program. And so I wrote a proposal, and I'm going to do a thing on film scoring. It was going to be in New York that year, and they're like, "Yeah, accepted." you know. So I was like, okay, I'm a film scoring expert now. So I did a class up there using like my approach was using like 4 or 5 different softwares from Logic Pro, GarageBand, um, you know, what was the other one we used to use?
Performer,
Performer. Thank you. That's right.
and then digital performer.
Yeah, when it had just become digital Performer.
Yep. Yep.
And I had an interface that was also a keyboard. That was kind of a unique
Yep.
thing that you don't see that too much anymore. But you could plug a mic into it, and it also used USB for MIDI. And so now I had a big screen, and I was like, you know, I would play my trombone along with a film, you know, and it was fun. But it's just, you know, technology has just become more and more a part of what I do. A lot for that reason, because you know some of these other things are so saturated, you know. Just kind of like I remember president of the union at here at the local 147. He was, you know, we're talking about getting gigs and you know bands and stuff, and Ray Hare
Yep.
back when he was just our local president. And he said, man, I can't book another jazz band. He goes, but don't you have a Latin band? And I had a little Latin trio at that time. We called it Que Pasa. And he was like, man, I can book that, you know. And he'd always call me up and said, hey man, I got a gig for Que Pasa. I'm like, okay, cool. But you know, I couldn't get him to book a jazz band, you know.
Yeah. Hey, Preston, before I toss it to you, the other behind the curtain secret that Mike was talking about, some of these things, no one played live on American Bandstand or Soul Train. They were all just mimicking to the master recordings, what were on the 45s. And so we'd see all these great performances and everyone moving around. They were just miming to their real recording. Preston, you guys, I had forgotten that till Mike brought up, you guys did a couple of videos too with the ensembles after a while too, right?
Yeah, we did. I did the first one with our combo just because it's, you know, it's obviously a smaller group, and I mean, it was early. I mean, we did this in like March or April when the pandemic first hit, and then towards the end of the year, we did one with the big band, and that was it was a massive undertaking.
I bet.
I mean, just getting that to, but it turned out great. I like the way it turned out, and
yeah, it did. It came great. You had a student edit it, didn't you? Or
yeah,
I know we talked about it.
Yeah, I had a student who he just likes to mess with film stuff on the side, like as a hobby, and he has what's the Adobe? I'm blanking on the
Photoshop.
Premiere.
Yeah, Premiere Pro.
Yeah.
There you go. And he's like, "Can I do it, please?" Actually, I had two of them. They were like arguing with each other. No, I want. And it's like, guys, hold on. And so, yeah, they put the overall video together, and it was interesting taking that on, conducting them, because I wasn't really conducting, but they would send in recordings, and I have to give feedback, and no, this needs to be like this, and it had to be very defined, the articulation. You know, we started off with the lead player or rhythm section, and then within each section the lead players, and it was very defined. Here's the articulation, and the lead players would send it to me. I listen, okay, no, do this one like this, and then send it out to the rest of the section. They listen, and then they play along with it, and it was an undertaking.
What was the song that you did?
We did Tiptoe with Dad Jones.
Oh.
Wow, and that's a hard chart.
Oh.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
That sax solo.
Yeah, it's on YouTube. You can find it.
Yeah, I remember hearing that. It was good.
You know, speaking of technology, I don't want to get too off, but I have a former student, Michael. I think you remember Austin Zhang, sax player.
Sure.
He's in his final semester at Manhattan School of Music, and he's using this technology called Jack Trip. I don't know if y'all have heard of it.
I've heard of that, and I've heard that's a little closer to real time, being able to do that now.
Yeah, and he's having great success. I mean, it's almost like he's started this little mini business, and he's having all these New York cats hitting him up saying, "Hey, man, we want to put on a concert," and they're all in their different apartments, and and they're live streaming it, and he puts on concerts, and you pay a donation fee to watch their concerts. And I'm curious the future, because I don't know, but the future of what this is going to be like, if, in terms of being able to play from your house, with people around the world that way. So, but I know there's requirements. You have to have certain internet speed. Your computer has to, be able to do certain.
Yeah, and that always works best if you're on a hardwired connection directly into the router instead of going through Wi-Fi.
Yeah, yeah. So there's more to it. But anyways, that just kind of got me thinking. What Mike was talking about that. But I guess to answer your question in terms of how we've been doing it. So that was, when the pandemic hit, I think just like many of us were just like, a deer in headlights, trying to figure out. And at that point, I was just like, we just wanted to make music. There was no curriculum set up. Let's get through the end of the year. So we were just doing what we could. But then once we hit the beginning of this school year, it was like, okay, there needs to be something in place. And it was fun. Right before the pandemic hit, the school at Plano ISD gave a Chromebook to every student in the district, which was cool at first, but for music, they can't handle it.
No.
So fortunately, most of my kids, if not all, have some other device that's a little bit more powerful than a Chromebook. So my kids are co-sat, where I have kids that choose to be face-to-face, and then some on the computer right next to me. We use Google Classroom, where they submit assignments that way. And but honestly, in my opinion, to me, the biggest thing that I've had to be is I'm the student's motivator, because especially I feel like especially the students who are still to this day completely virtual, it's tough. It's tough on them.
It is.
They don't hang out with their friends and their buddies. I mean, if you think about when you're in high school, this is not something that we had to face. And if we wanted to go catch a movie or go get a bite to eat, no problem.
Well, the big thing in band programs at high school has always been a big factor of it is the social side.
Absolutely, 100%. We have a saying in the band world for some kids where it says, this kid needs band more than band needs this kid, just from that social side of things.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, being the kid's motivator, it's hard. And some of them I have kids who are going on to major conservatories, and they're like, man, I'm losing some motivation to practice right now, just because I don't have that normal interaction every day. And I'll be honest, there have been some moments as an educator where I've felt like I've lost a little motivation to get up and go teach that first period jazz band, just because I know it's like I've got 2 kids in the classroom and the rest of them are on a computer on the other side of me, and we're not making that live music, which I long for. But overall, I've been very fortunate with the students that I've had. They've been very positive, encouraging. We're finally to a point, I guess in January, we started meeting once a week after school as a big band. Actually, our combo, a small group, started meeting last semester. And man, it was that first rehearsal, just hearing them, it was a little emotional, just making that live music for the first time and realizing the things that we took for granted,
Yeah.
So like I said, we're meeting once a week now, and it's we're trying to put on a little concert at the end of the school year in May. We're going to call it Jazz in the Park, because normally we have our big production Glenn Miller night, where it's a dinner dance thing that we do. So we're not going to do that, but we're going to do this. We're calling it Jazz in the Park. We're going to hold it outside by the water fountain by the school, and then we're going to light it up with those patio lights, and and we're going to make it special. And I told this for the seniors. I had sorry if I'm rambling here, but I have a senior girl. So she raised her hand in class one day. She says, Mr. Pierce, she says, look, she says, we missed prom last year. We're probably going to miss it this year. We missed homecoming. We missed our band trip to Disney World this year. She says, Glenn Miller night is the last hope that we have. Can we please do it? And I said, look, we can't host a dinner and dance like inside the building. And another kid raised his hand and says, and she was in tears. And he says, look, what if we do this? We'll call it Jazz in the Park. We'll play outside. It's like Glenn Miller night, but we won't have food. And so that's what we're going to try to do. And that's one of our end of the year goals. And I'm going to just, like I said, I'm doing it for the seniors this year, and I'm going to try to make it as special as we possibly can. And
you guys might also You might be able to do an outdoor performance at Legacy West because that stage is spread out enough, and if you
Yeah.
talk to them, they might get you in there. You explain the
I've tried.
situation.
I've tried. I have a parent who reached out to them and they wanted thousands of dollars. I'm like,
Really?
yeah, it was
Because I
crazy.
mean, they pay the groups. I mean, at
Yeah.
least I know we're playing there with a seven-piece group, and we get paid well to be out there because crowd's already there.
Yeah.
They
Well, that would
probably
be,
don't know that your band sounds like a professional band. They think it's oh, it's a high school band. But if they would
That may
listen to
be,
you, they would really
oh,
yeah.
thank you.
I mean,
Appreciate that.
especially if you encourage them being part of the community and
Yeah. I mean,
that
it's right
whole
around the
side.
corner.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Maybe I'll talk to you afterwards and get contact info. Maybe I need to be the one.
I'll have to check because the booking has changed, but I can talk to the guy that books there and get that contact for you if you check
Okay.
back.
Cool.
Sergio, you almost must had the hardest of anybody going into a new program in this situation and starting out your first year in these conditions. How'd you do that?
well, yeah, it has been very challenging because I am in a new place and I don't interact with anybody. Just a little bit with some of the faculty sometimes and not much. So my students they know my face, like my Zoom setup and my face, but we don't interact much in person. But it has been great. It has been better than what I could have expected. And yeah, it is challenging, as Preston said, sometimes to keep the motivation for the students and for us. I think like the students now, when we do in-person stuff, like I told you that my improv class, it meets 3 times per week, and we do one online and then two in person, or two in person. Sorry, two online, one in person. It depends on the weeks and what's going on in terms of cases and stuff like that. But I feel like now when we get together, we cannot enjoy 100% yet, even though it's great to be together. But the masks, the distance, like you cannot really hear the group the way it should be, right? So
Yes.
sometimes trombone players are like so spread out, and I don't know, it's difficult. But I think what doesn't change is that students and teachers, we're still as curious about this music as we were before the pandemic, and I think that's what makes it happen. And I think everybody adjusts, the best. I remember it was more traumatic for me, when the pandemic started at UTA, because we had all these great plans, and with my combos we were doing that this Chick Korea project, and we had
Right.
performances. I helped creating a new venue. We were gonna play every week at this the Draft
At
House
Levitt?
in
Oh, the draft house. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah in I think it was the Draft House. I forgot the name, but yeah, we were gonna start this weekly thing, and we did. So we for 1 month we had a group playing there every week, and there were so many great things starting and flourishing, and I think it was really tough on the students too when the pandemic started. But I always knew that the lessons were not going to be a problem, because I have been teaching online for years now. People in Spain and people in Latin America, and I have received online lessons too. So I knew that was not a problem. But yeah, combo and improv and all these classes were very challenging. Now I think with the LMS system in my school, we use Canvas. I have all my courses designed and everything is in there. Students know where to find information. They know their deadlines. They know everything. So it's very organized. And I do some, as Mike said, some instructional videos when it's necessary. I have all my materials in there. So I think it has helped us to be more organized. And I think I'm gonna keep using this even when we do in-person stuff. I am not gonna change that. That change is gonna stay. All that organization, all these tools for organization, and instructional videos and all that, because they can check out that when they're practicing, and they might
Yeah.
be even more focused than when they are in the lecture. So I think it has advantages that they're gonna stay with us, but I cannot wait to be again, have that personal interaction. Sometimes I don't know if I'm doing right or wrong. uh, I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know if my students are happy with the class or not, because you don't get much interaction. I just see them, but they're all muted, right? Because I'm talking, and you don't get any. It's like an empty space, right? Like I don't hear anything. I just hear myself, and that's it. It's like when you're on the studio, right? Recording your part, and that's it. So, but I don't know. I think student evaluations were very useful for me, because I got very positive feedback from the students, and some good suggestions as well. So then okay, you trust more what you are doing, and then talking to colleagues like we're doing right now. I have been talking to all the friends that I have that are teaching in different situations, high school, college, everything.
I
And
think we all did that like a year ago.
mm-hmm,
Mike, you and I and several other people had discussions about,
mm-hmm,
okay, what's the best way to approach this? What's the best tools to use to do online? What sort of setup? What do I need to do? And a lot of us collaborated and tried to
mm-hmm,
figure out the best way to do things because none of us had ever done it full time. Yeah, like you
mm-hmm,
said, you've done online lessons. I've done some form of online lessons, gosh, back to probably 2000, but
yeah,
never in a full time basis. And I've
mm-hmm,
done remote recordings, gosh, probably back to 2007, 2008, trading wave files with Elliot Randall, but it was never, okay, I got to do this every week, every
it's the only
day.
way. It's the
Yeah,
only way. Yeah, 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 yeah. I think that can be exhausting. You just think about the all the things that are involved. I think it definitely takes more time for me as an educator to do everything I do now. Because, for example, in the past, if I have a class that it's a jazz keyboard class for non-pianists, right? So in those classes, they meet twice a week. I would have a lecture on Thursdays. They practice over the weekend, then a test on Tuesday, and you just hear them play the test, and they leave when they're done, right? Now I have to teach twice as much because I teach on
right.
Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then they submit videos. So then I have to grade the videos. I have to watch all the videos in detail, and for the students too, because they used to do their test during class time, and then that's it. Now they have to do the videos, do the practicing, show up to class. So I know that some students have been overwhelmed because they say that they have more work than ever,
Yeah.
because we also as instructors we feel the need to give them assignments, because if not it feels like we're not doing our job. And then but that happens in every class they have. So they have been overwhelmed, and also sometimes we are not aware of other classes deadlines, and then the deadlines conflict. You know what I mean? Like I might have a deadline
Yes.
for them on Thursday at 7 p.m., and they have another assignment for another class that the deadline is same day, 1 hour later, and they struggle with that. So I think it needs communication among the departments too. I am always in contact with my colleagues here at CCM, and I try to be aware of what are they doing. For example, when I know that they have a big band concert coming in, then I try to be lighter on the load on my side for certain classes and stuff like that. I think it's necessary these days.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in
But
my improv class, for example, just to finish with this, in my improv class, I have noticed that sometimes we focus too much on playing. Yeah, let's play this tune, and then we might play the same song 4 times, and there's not much progress involved, because they're just playing what they usually play, and that's it. And you can give some feedback, but sometimes it can be confusing too. So in my improv classes now, we have been very analytical, because on the online meetings, I show them my transcriptions of things that we're studying on specific recordings. For example, today we were studying Inner Urge, right? So I showed them some transcriptions, some different people playing that. So how Jerry Bergonzi approaches that versus
oh,
Joe
nice.
Henderson. They play different tempos, they play different devices. Then I show them on the screen. So I got them, I think the students improve their critical thinking and listening more. But at the same time, they don't play as much. So maybe their
Right.
their technical there are technical aspects that are not being developed as much as in the past, but the analytical aspect it's developing more. So I think we will have to find a balance in the future on how to use both more effectively. But it has opened some new doors as well, I think.
Right. Well, I think that's something I've always stressed with students. A lot of times, your most productive practice is away from your instrument.
Mm-hmm.
Just getting the knowledge and understanding things in your head, so when you're playing, you don't have to think. And that's the problem when you have kids that haven't internalized all of the vocabulary, all of the harmonic, melodic knowledge they need, and they're trying to figure that out as they're improvising.
Mm-hmm.
Just being able to set the priority of studying things away from your instrument is productive practice, and sometimes more productive practice.
Yeah, or for example, playing the melodies. In improv classes in the past, I got them. Yeah, learn the melody from the recording. You can tell that 1 million times, but there's still some students that don't do it. As
Oh, sure.
Preston said, they learn from a lead sheet or from music somewhere. But now the assignment is to play the melody along the original recording. So if they are doing wrong notes or if they are not doing the nuances and the inflections of the recording,
Right.
it's very obvious to them as well.
Yeah.
So then they don't submit that take and they keep studying. So it would be you would not believe like how close to these recordings the students sound now. Like, I think they're absorbing more positive things from the recordings now. On the other hand, we don't play as much as we used to,
Right.
so we have to balance that. But now they play, I don't know, we have done things this semester like Speak No Evil, and you hear, all the dynamics and everything happening exactly the way they,
Yeah.
Mike, you
Yeah.
probably, I think you might love this recording. Do you know Bill Evans' album with Tom Harrell and Larry Schneider?
Oh, yeah.
We Will
Yeah.
Meet Again. So last week
That's
we were doing Bill Hits tune from that recording,
yeah.
and I mean I couldn't believe how close to the recording everybody sounded.
Yeah.
Playing the parts and rhythm section and everything. So I give them more cues that I usually do. For
Yeah.
example, I work with the bass player on playing the thing that Mark Johnson implies. It's like a 12/8 over the medium swing subdivision and stuff like that. So I have never been able to get that much in detail when I was teaching in person.
Right. And you're not trying to say that the real book isn't accurate, are you?
No, I mean it does its job, But
Yeah.
when you wanna find a certain level of sophistication, the only way is just to go to the primary
It's a
source, as in
Yeah.
every science.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we should probably start wrapping up. Thursday, we have our Rising Stars concert, and one of them is there with a younger picture of him playing trumpet. Christopher Lawson Palmer is playing along with Isaac Byrd, who Preston and Sergio both worked with, June Lee from UNT, and then Sergio also worked with, does she go by Sky or Hanol?
I have known both names, so I on the emails
Okay.
it's Hanol for me, but when I talk to her, it's Sky. Yeah,
Yeah, she always seems to lean more towards Sky. So
yeah,
Sky
she likes
from,
Sky. Yeah, for all the formal stuff, I had to
yeah,
say Hanol, but yeah, she's great. She studied with me at UNT, like I don't know, maybe 2012.
oh
So
wow,
I was her first teacher at UNT and her last at UTA. Well, now she's studying with Peter Rio,
right,
amazing pianist and friend that I personally like a lot. He's one of my closest friends. But yeah, I have known Sky, for a long time. So I'm really happy that she has that opportunity, and also Isaac. So
yeah,
I'm
and
looking forward to
yeah,
hear it.
Isaac and Sky were supposed to play last year, but we had to
Hmm.
cancel it. Isaac did play 2 years ago when he was at Plano West also, and he
Hmm.
sounded great back then. So I'm looking forward to hear him. So hopefully everyone can join us Thursday, 7:30 Central Time. Just search for the Dallas Jazz Piano Society YouTube page.
Hmm.
No login, just go there at 7:30, or if we get delayed a minute or two after, just the live video will pop up there. And if you miss it, all of our concerts and all of these Jazz Explained episodes are archived there on the YouTube page that you can check out anytime. So one more time, thanks to Preston, Mike Bogle, and Sergio for joining us. This is actually, Sergio, you were on the first episode.
Yeah,
Was
we
you
did.
and I
We did. Yeah, we did that presentation on pianists
talking about,
of the
yeah,
50s.
jazz pianist of the 50s, which was nice. So it's great to have you back. We miss seeing you in town.
Yeah, I miss everybody there. I want to visit. I want to go for the Gen conference.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully I'll get to see you there.
That'd be
Everybody.
great. That'd
Yeah.
be great. And thanks everyone for joining us. And tune in and check out Christopher on Thursday and our other 3 rising stars.
Thanks, Michael.
Thank
Everybody,
you.
good
Thank
to
you.
meet you
everybody.
guys.
Pleasure.
Take care.